is that there's been a lot of changes in the economy, in the city, and some expectations. It's time, we figured, for at very least, a tune-up or a review of the plan to make sure we feel we're on the right track, and this is something that we can implement. It still makes sense. So we actually got direction directly from the council, and when they adopted the comprehensive plan earlier, they said, there are these issues, staff, please spend some time addressing them. They said, please look at the analysis and augment it as necessary, modify policy if we direct you to, and then move ahead with more specific implementation for making things happen. So, and again, as I know, parks are not really on the table in terms of this review. No one has ever said parks are not a good idea in the riverfront, up and down. So we're very supportive of that, and we're also very excited about this competition that is going to track me alongside this. We've had a lot of conversations at the staff and other levels to make sure that what we're doing and what they're doing is we really, really wonderful to work together. So we continue to think of parks as leading the way in whatever vision we have for this area, even if it's not a whole lot different than today. Parks are. I don't know if you hear that loud and clear. So.
Where are you?
Again, for people who are trying to get a sense of what the study area is, we're talking about.
You're at the shop, and no one's been there.
Plymouth and 8th, all the way up to Camden Bridge, and pretty much we're on the northeast side. We're pretty much focusing on west of Marshall. I mean, we will be looking a little bit on that side, but the plan doesn't actually envision much changing east of Marshall. It seems that the neighborhoods are the neighborhoods. It's more about what is right on the riverfront. Of course, on the west side, for those of you who know what that is, there's a lot more place. It's pretty much everything between 94 and the river. Anyway, and I'm not going to spend much time on these, but we've spent a lot of time recently just looking at the conditions out here. We looked at the land use. We went and looked at all the different businesses there, what type of business they are, what are their sort of patterns or clusters, and they're kind of are. They're sort of certain groupings. We have an awful lot of metal work. We have an awful lot of printing and publishing. A lot of stuff that's in the construction industry, in the construction materials. So it's not, of course, just random up there. We're trying to make sure that we understand the lay of the land to make these decisions. Again, not too much in this, and this you can't see it too well in this projecting, but we're looking at the value of the property, whether it's overvalued or undervalued, and the condition of the buildings. Again, these are sort of markers to say, are certain areas ripe for redevelopment, or are they doing just fine and there's not much interest in changing them, at least in the short term?
For the visually challenged, could you give us your color code?
Yes, I think I can even try because it's not showing it very well today. It's the darker ones are in this map, the darker ones are the ones that are in worse condition, but I don't know if you have that pretty fair by to figure that out. If anyone's interested, I can get you a nice crystal clear version of this. Somehow, depending on the projector, sometimes it shows up and sometimes it doesn't very well. So there's some sites, it is sort of scattered. What it does say is actually that most buildings in this area, won't surprise anybody, aren't brand new, shiny, fancy. There's a few of those, but most of them have some age on them, and it's time for folks to think about, are they going to be investing in their property or not?
But the slide on the right, the ratio of building value to land value. So if you saw the red, that would indicate a higher ratio. In other words, there was a lot of value in the buildings, and if it's white, it's less. Is that correct?
Yes. The blues and the reds in this map are ones where the building is worth a lot relative to its site, which means it's less likely to redevelop.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of blues in the residential areas in particular here, with some parcels on there. The reason you see a lot of gray is because a lot of building, there's no building there. Or very little building. You're talking about the rail tracks, or building a place that's just mainly trucks or storage. So, and we have a lot of that.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but you did talk about redevelopment and saying that is a marker in terms of how high that ratio is. What color do you need to see to say, now this is ripe for redevelopment? If it's blue, that's kind of saying, no, probably not? Or?
Well, the higher value, the more the building is worth relative to the land, the less likely you're going to tear that building down.
Right.
If you have prime piece of real estate and you have a little shack on it,
right,
you're not really attached to that shack. Right. So the properties that are sort of gray, which I guess are less, it's rail yard, and then you're not going to build they won't probably let you build it. Or sort of orangey is kind of the colors of the ones that the building is not worth a lot considering its location.
Yeah.
That's just something to think about. Again, we're getting into a lot more detail than we can today on that in the analysis.
Okay.
And these maps show you even more faintly. There's not a lot of, we say, well, what about the natural features in here? The sad thing is we have pretty much, except for the river itself, we've probably eliminated most of the habitat and floodplain areas along the river over the years in the course of things. So there's a lot of emphasis on the riverfront and parkland along the edges restoration, but not a whole lot of land. And all of the map on the right tells you is that all those dots, maybe you see the dots, each of those is potentially a contaminated site. So that means whenever we do any scenario, we have to say, what are the costs plus what's the contamination that needs to be taken care of. And that's not unusual for any part of the city. It's just an old city. People just used to dump things on the ground. It's just how things were done before.
Is there a general sense of the level of contamination throughout the site? I mean, is it?
It varies. We do have, for each individual site, we have a general sense of that. I can't say.
Yeah.
Most of this is not super front level. This is folks who sprayed oil to keep the dust down, or had a bunch of junk when they had a little trash heap in the corner of the properties. Most of the stuff is manageable, but it is a cost associated with any new business. If you're the same business that's been there 100 years, you probably have something on your site.
Plus, all the contamination northeast filters down and tends to move toward the river
Yes.
just because of the aquifers.
That's a very good point.
Elevation.
The elevation,
So,
nature.
nature and man working together. In this case.
Destroy both of them. Destroy each other.
And this is a map. We tried to say, well, what happens, and I have a better map than this. We're going to incorporate the next phase of work, which I will get to it. But we're working towards a new report that's coming out within a month or two. So we're getting you up to speed now, but we still have some exciting new stuff coming. We were looking at sort of what development has happened in this area in the last 10 years to say, well, plan happened, so what's happened? Not a lot in terms of new development. Not a whole lot of new buildings of any sort have been built. I think we have, in the intervening 10 years, we had pretty much a handful of new permits in that area in terms of new buildings. It's a different story if you look at rehab. You start pulling that apart and saying, well, what about buildings that they didn't build anything new, but they put in a whole HVAC system or a brand new roof, or they add an addition? You get a whole different picture. But in terms of brand new buildings, as in, say, we got rid of the old building, brand new building, not a lot in the past 10 years. And so part of our exercise is saying, well, why is that the case? Is that because people just love the way it is, or because people don't consider it worth investing in, or are we doing something wrong? There's questions that come up, especially since there was quite a real estate surge during those years. We are trying to do it. We still haven't quite gotten it all tied down. Why is this area the way it is? So, I'm trying not to go through all this stuff because I know we have some limited amount of time, but just as I want to give you an overview of what we've been looking at in this process. We sort of look at the findings and the changes in the land. I think I've talked about some of these already. There's an appreciation for what the impacts are of locating these industrial uses in this area. There's been increased focus on sustainability. And we've also seen developers find new and interesting ways to invest in the urban core in Minneapolis in the past 10 years. So that's been very encouraging for us as a city for folks to say, well, suburbs are not just where it's at. We're going to live in the city. We're going to find ways that we can make housing products and business products that work in this area. So, keep going. And we sort of developed these sort of research needs of what did the Above the Falls plan do? There's a massive plan. Anyone who's involved in it, lots of effort, lots of work. But this is saying we're not redoing the plan, but what do we need an update to now to make sure we're doing due diligence with this planning effort and the implementation. And we focused on sort of doing some additional economic analysis. This is looking at the fiscal and economic impacts of development and of different scenarios. And what's, again, saying, what it comes down to is saying, what do you need to make a project work in this area? And understanding what that means and understanding how that can move forward. And Also, just looking at the systems impacts, we're understanding better the transportation system out there. Rail, is what's going on with that? And of course, understanding how the parks fit into all that. And my colleague did this one. I think it's a little intimidating, but this is just looking at the sheer number of issues that are out there right now. This is a complicated area and actually a fascinating project to work on, but not. We haven't yet found a simple answer. If anyone has one, you can talk to me afterwards, and we'll be most appreciative. But this is definitely an area that requires a lot of balancing a lot of different factors. So we have done actually market finding summary. We hired a consultant firm. We actually hired a firm out of the West Coast because we thought it'd be nice to have a fresh look, someone who's worked in peer cities, not so much in this area, but to sort of talk about our area in relation to other areas. Because this won't surprise, we're not the only industrial riverfront in the nation. There are probably dozens and dozens of cities like ours. We want to make sure we're learning from what peer cities are doing elsewhere. But we also wanted local knowledge too. We spent a lot of time meeting with our developer and folks in the development community, with residential, industrial, office, and so sitting down and asking them, what do you think about this area? What do you see going here? How would you invest in this area? What's realistic to expect from the development community, northeast and north in these areas in terms of the future? And our market findings found and again, there's some more detail than we can get into today, that there is some demand for different types of office, industrial, and definitely residential. The main lesson from all of this we heard was that building on strength is where it's at. You can't just take a development, and again, this makes intuitive sense, you can't just take a development and say, I like that site way up there, just slap it up there. They would say, find your strong residential cores, find your strong office and commercial areas, build out from those, start in the edges and build up and out from those. As any scenario, they said, where you're going to build anything new, just plopped in the middle of a place, that's probably not going to work for anybody. And again, making intuitive sense, but sometimes when you're thinking about these pieces on the map, it's easy to think, oh, we'll just do this part first. But we did hear very loud and clear that even though there are a lot of different things viable here, we've got to start from the areas. And I can say that they generally thought, again, not being surprised, northeast would be an easier redevelopment scenarios than north side of the river. A lot of obvious reasons. Again, we had this developer roundtable discussion, and they thought that the areas, again, where's residential going to work here? Well, of course, everyone starts with saying the economy's bad, but it will change. Market-driven residential, they said closer to downtown, the better, in terms of the attractiveness for development. Again, this can change over time. This is just here and now. And again, looking for areas that are less risky. And the industrial uses, they say, well, what about the ones that are there now? A lot of them, they say, are doing fine and are attracted to the area because it has great transportation access and it's cheap, relatively speaking, in terms of land. Our taxes aren't cheap, but the location is, for some businesses, are quite happy to be there. They've been there a long time and they're not really interested in moving. And that needs to be taken into account when we're discussing any changes. And pretty much everyone agreed that every type of use would love to have access to upgraded parks. And the message of office and regional corporate headquarters is basically the same thing, so we can just go over those. But we heard from the developers, and again, this was saying, well, what should the city, capital C, be doing in this area? And what we heard was, we need to outline a clear, well-supported